Hey, Onco PT, and welcome to this episode of the Onco PT podcast. Now, I briefly mentioned this story off camera, but I'm going to share it one more time because I think this next guest is really, really cool and helped me set a goal that I never thought that I could actually accomplish. So, Sheree King is our guest today on the Onco PT podcast. And Sheree was one of the first, quote, strangers or not a friend that I met in person who then followed me on social media. And I set a goal for myself. I was like, one day, I don't know who this ribbons PT person is on Instagram, but I'm going to meet this person someday because I think they are really, really cool. And I have, since setting that goal, had the immeasurable honor and privilege to meet Sheree, but also to get to coach her along some really cool milestones in her career that we're going to talk about today on the Onco PT podcast. So without further ado, Sheree, welcome to the Onco PT podcast.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me, Elise.
So, Sheree, I know a little bit about you, but would you mind sharing with our audience today who you are, where you practice, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. So I'm a physical therapist and I practice in Johnson City and Kingsport, Tennessee. And I had a really strong background in acute care and some outpatient. And then when we relocated to this area, I took a job in outpatient PT, and then I opened a private practice in the middle of COVID in 20. So saw our first patient in May of 20 when everybody else was staying at home. Yes.
Oh my God. Okay, so I knew it was during COVID, but I didn't know how fresh during COVID. So can we let's take a step back. So you came from acute care, some outpatient, and then you decided, A, I'm going to start a private practice. Was it in oncology from the get-go, like you knew you wanted to do oncology in your private practice?
Yes, when we relocated to this area, I took a job in a big hospital-based outpatient center,
Mm-hmm.
and the person that was doing lymphedema therapy there was transferring back inside the hospital. So they needed somebody to do lymphedema, which they sent me and paid for my training. So that's how I got
Nice.
interested in all that. And um, when you tip the iceberg of lymphedema, you can't just get lymphedema without getting all the rest of the taste in your mouth for the cancer rehab. So, and my boss was very sports orthopedic minded, and they put him on the cancer committee for that health system. And he didn't want to do it. So he came to me and he goes, I need you to go do this. And so I got stuck on the cancer committee. I guess not stuck. It was kind of a blessing in disguise
Yeah.
because we had went through some vice presidents. So we had one vice president over oncology that really picked up on my passion for oncology. And she actually created me a job inside the cancer centers. So I worked from 16 to 20 inside three cancer centers. I commuted between three cancer centers.
Oh my God.
And then
Holy cow.
our system went through a huge merger, and I was already like maxed out with business because it was, me, myself, and I. And when we went through the merger, there were way too many balls in the air for them to develop programs and do all that. And I'm no spring chicken, so I knew if I was going to develop programs and do more in cancer rehab, it was not going to be on their umbrella just because they had too many balls in the air doing other things.
Yeah.
And I actually, and this was my husband's idea, we went to some higher ups in our health system and said, y'all just went through this merger, you got a lot of things going on, but we have this unmet need in the community and we want to do it. And they said, go do it. Of course, they did not financially support us, but they said, go do it. We will support you with our referrals. So that's
Holy
how we opened.
cow.
That we met with them in the fall of 19. And as you well know, starting in private practice, you've got to find a location. We started out taking insurance from the get-go, so we were trying to do credentialing and all that. And like signed a lease in on January 1st or 2nd, and then started credentialing then. And of course, then everybody shut down in 20 when we're trying to open. Hired our first employee in March, an office person, and then we had a presidential stay-at-home order. So, but we do focus only on oncology and lymphedema. We don't see orthopedics. We'll see you with an orthopedic injury if you've had a history of cancer, but not straight orthopedics or neuro or any of that. So my husband always says, once you're in the club, you can come back here, and you got to have cancer or lymphedema to be in the club.
I'm the same. I'm 100% the same. So fast forward to today, Sheree. Ribbons, which is the name of your private practice, is not just doing well in the one location, but y'all also have multiple locations now, right?
Yes, we opened, the second location was open a year in this January. So,
wow.
And all of our staff commutes back and forth between both locations. We just had we were getting a lot of referrals from that area. Our area, where there's 3 smaller cities, and like you can easily drive between them. And if you're from a big city, you don't think twice about that. But the people here think that they can't leave their city limits. Totally. So a 20-minute, 25-minute drive is like, oh no, I can't drive all the way there. So we had a lot of referrals coming from a couple of physicians in Johnson City. And I actually live in Johnson City. I just worked in Kingsport most of my career in this area. So that's why I opened in Kingsport first. But so we opened in Johnson City.
Oh my God. Okay, cool. So take me back. Deciding to open a private practice is already so huge, especially when you're leaving. You know, there is some sense of security when you're working with a larger institution. Now, yours was in flux because, like you mentioned, they went through that merger. There were a lot of balls in the air. And then on top of that, we had COVID hit, beginning part of 2020. And this is coinciding right when you are starting, like you are laying the foundation to hit the ground running whenever I'm sure the insurance credentialing process came back. What was that like in the early months of, oh my God, we're opening a private practice and also we have a mandatory stay-at-home situation?
And so credentialing took, I think, longer because people, they weren't credentialing. Like Medicare, it took forever. And I finally called them one day and they go, is this COVID related? I go, no, but I filled out my application January 2nd. And it's like, March or whatever. So everybody was just way overwhelmed. Everything was done differently. It was like we were, and of course I didn't know any different, but looking back on it now, I can say, oh my, like that wasn't normal because, it was just done so differently. Everybody that credentialed with the insurance companies was working from home, and there was a couple of contracts that we sent back and forth, and they were like, oh, I can't make those changes at this computer at my house, and you're just going to have to trust it's going to be that way. And I'm like, I'm not signing it like that. No. Yeah. So,
oh my God.
So it was a lot of different things. And it really worked to our advantage a couple of times because there was no wording to support something. And we came back and said, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. And I had an email stream and they were like, oh yeah, well, we didn't really mean it for all of those people, just for certain people. But I was like, but that's not what's not relayed to me. So
that, right? Like, ooh, we'd have that in writing, Sheree.
Yes.
Oh my God. Very smart. Yes. Very smart. So when you said that you had your first patient in May of 2020, is that right?
Yes.
How was that process? Because so from my perspective, so I'm in Texas and I was previously employed by a corporate like hospital-based outpatient system. And we actually stayed working for better, for worse, like mainly full time during that first like month or so. And it was in April and May when our hours started getting cut, even though like we still had patients because I was inside the cancer center, etc. So like your stuff was kind of taking off as mine was very much like being shut down. What was that like? Because I
Right.
imagine that kind of mirrors what was happening elsewhere in the country as well.
And I think that if I was in a normal private practice, like I wouldn't have survived. But cancer patients, they had to get their chemo, they had to go to radiation, they were getting out
Yeah.
anyway, so they came to PT. Some of them were very, a little standoffish, but when I told them, I said, we only see cancer patients, and also you're going to be the only, because I saw patients one on one. I said,
Yeah.
you're going to be the only person in the clinic. You might pass somebody coming,
Wonderful.
leaving or going. And they were like, oh, okay, well then I'll come. And
Cool.
I also, because I'd worked for this health system for a long, long time, I had a huge supply of PTO hours piled up.
Nice.
So what I did is as I got credentialed with certain insurances, I just flip them to my private practice and see them here. And then I saw everybody else still in my old job. So I just took PTO
Wow.
hours when I was working here and until I got all credentialed, and then I completely cut the cord.
Oh my God. How was that transition? If you're comfortable talking about that, going from working for somebody to working for yourself for the patients.
Um, it was good, and some patients saw me both places. Like I remember one person I saw with an insurance that I'd already been credentialed with, and they scheduled for an evaluation. And I was like, why? Because I had tried to train the people that were doing my scheduling. I was like, why'd you schedule this person here? They go, well, she wouldn't come to the other place. And I was like, okay. So after I saw her, I was like, why won't you come to the other place? She said, well, I just didn't know if I would see you or not. And I was like, yes, you're going to
Oh,
see me. So yeah. Um, but it went smooth. I mean, the staff and everything was very supportive. You'd think it would have been mass confusion. It really wasn't. And I would just have the patients fill out a request for records, and then they would fax over like my previous stuff. So yeah, it was
that is
it was
amazing.
it was smoother than you would think it would be.
That is incredible. I'm, first of all, so happy for you, but also selfishly, I'm very jealous because that sounds amazing. And so much smoother than. So right now I'm going through the insurance credentialing process, and I
Yes,
mean, like, I don't know if it's day or night sometimes with those applications. So
yes, it's a
holy
nightmare. I
cow.
think I saw you post like tackling Medicare again, and you had a big cup of. I think it was hot tea, but I almost replied to that. Is that tea or wine?
You should have asked. It was tea that time, but I think maybe in the future I'll have a little something extra.
Yeah, because
Oh my
yes,
god.
I don't want to do that paperwork ever again. Yes.
So today in your practice, Sheree, what kind of patients are you seeing? What kind of diagnoses, what kind of impairments are you seeing in your practice?
We see non-cancer related lymphedema. We do have a big vascular surgeon that sends a lot of
Very cool.
non-cancer related lymphedema.
Very cool.
But we see any other cancer diagnosis. Breast cancer is probably our biggest population, just because we have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of surgeons on board for breast cancer surveillance that send them before surgery, and then we see them after surgery for up to a year. So breast cancer is a big, but we've had a lot of colon cancers lately with peripheral neuropathy, balance issues. We have, I've made our OT our kind of head and neck specialist because, Medicare lumps
Nice.
PT into speech, and those head and neck people need a lot of speech therapy too. So we've let OT have their own bucket of money, and she's done mainly our head and neck cancers, but she's doing a lot of monitoring them for lymphedema, doing range of motion, um, all of those kinds of things. And those are usually referred by our rad oncs, because the rad oncs kind of really gotten on
Mm-hmm.
board with that. Um, I've seen a few multiple myeloma going for stem cells. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Mainly, they were referred for neuropathy before they are for their stem cell. We don't do stem cells here. They're going to a bigger cancer center in Charlotte, North Carolina, Nashville, or even
Wow.
at Duke University. So a
Okay.
lot of times they don't make it back in the clinic afterwards to beef them back up after that.
Mm-hmm.
But we've seen a few before they go for their stem cell.
Very, very cool. And you mentioned you've got OT in house, so it seems like you've got a multidisciplinary presence at
Yes,
Ribbons.
we have another PT, a PTA, and then we just had our second OT, and she just got back from CLT training. Yes.
That is so exciting. Oh my god. Oh. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to talk to you more, maybe in like a second interview, about some of the kind of tricks and tips of the trade, because I had completely forgotten about the whole, there's OT, and then because of the dang not Oxford comma, that is not like the Oxford
Yes.
comma is not there
Yes.
in the language. So PT and speech therapy are lumped together, which like okay. So anyways, I'll have you back on, Sheree, to talk about the
Okay.
like tips and tricks of the trade, because there's some of these strategies that we don't really think about because we're so into the patient care of like, yeah, we're gonna help this patient get better, and then there's this admin silliness. Kind of on the
Right.
other side, it's like, oh yeah, you have to pay attention to that. I'm sure you have quite the experience in
Yes.
do's and do nots of all of that.
Yes.
Oh my god. So you've been practicing in oncology for several years at this point, even before you opened your private practice. At what point did you say, I think I want to go deeper? I want to specialize in oncology physical therapy.
Yeah. So I had a little bit of taste of that when I was working in the cancer centers, and I had mentioned it to our current vice president at that time, and she was like, "Yeah, we'll pay for that if you want to do that." And of course, I looked at all the specialization, how what I had to do, and I was like, "Yeah, I can't do that, can't do that, can't do that." But then when I went into private practice, I was like, I need to, if I'm going to go head to head with why you need to send patients to us, I need to have the credentials behind my name to show why you need to send it to us. So
Yes.
I wanted to be able to present myself better and show that I had the knowledge base to treat cancer
Mm-hmm.
survivors, just to assure our referring providers that why they needed to send them to us instead of, because we still have patients. There's Southwest Virginia borders us, and that's a very rural
Mm-hmm.
area, and we still have
Mm-hmm.
patients drive out of that. We've had patients drive from Kentucky, yeah, Southeast Kentucky, down to see us. So I felt like I needed to just be able to prove myself that it was worth the drive and the referral. So to have more
And that's a really
credibility.
good point. Yeah, that's something that Scott Capozza talks a lot about for his kind of justification of, when I walk into a room and I have these, this title behind my name, people kind of pay attention a little more. What's been your experience with, since you're now board certified, how do you feel like that's kind of helped you show up in your community as a go-to expert where people know that they can get high quality cancer rehab?
Yes, and I think it also. I think it gives you. I feel like now I have a platform to stand on to voice my voice in the community, and I've I've done a couple of lectures at a PT school in Nashville.
Oh my God.
To I did that before I had that specialist certification, but also since having certification, I feel like I really have a platform to use to go more into the community and speak in the community and um, do those kinds of things. Just because I've got the credentials now, rather than saying, "Yeah, I know a lot about breast cancer." Um, so I
Yeah.
do have the credentials to do that with. And I think we have also been able to, we had an insurance company contact us, I think it was going to go in force in September of last year, and they were trying to cut our reimbursement 30%. And so we had to contact them and said, we're not the big box PT clinic. We're not seeing three and
Mm-hmm.
four patients at a time. We're seeing patients one on one. All of our
Yeah.
therapists are certified lymphedema therapists, and we have one of three board certified oncology PTs in the state. So they actually, not only did we go back to our original rate, but we bumped it up 30%.
Okay, Sheree needs to be teaching this now. Like, my teaching is done. Sheree is teaching the master class now. Oh my God, are you serious?
Yes. And I'll have to, my husband, does our operations, and I'll have
Yeah.
to give him credit for that one. Yeah. He went to bat really hard for that. Yeah.
I did get to meet Mr. Sheree King at CSM this past February, and he was an absolute delight. Like, I'm so glad that he's on your team doing all of this stuff for you and your patients because that is just so amazing. Oh my God. And like, this is not, that absolutely is not one of the like perks or benefits that we tend to talk about when it comes to specialization. But what an incredible opportunity to turn that around and show that to that third party
Right.
payer and say, actually, we're doing really, really, really good and important work here that is not happening elsewhere in our area. But one of three in the entire state of Tennessee, Sheree?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
oh my
Yes.
God.
And I think patients too, they'll say, the oncologist really wanted me to come here. They really wanted me to come here. And I would say, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I am a board certified specialist and oncologist. And they'd be, oh, okay. Oh,
That makes sense. Oh my gosh. Wow. Do you feel like that's something that the oncologists and the oncology providers in your region recognize as being important and you need to see Sheree because she's a board certified specialist?
yes, I do think they see that. And so I take a yoga class, and there's a lot of people from the cancer center in there here in Kingsport. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I'm
Yeah.
taking my board. They heard me like, I gotta go and study. I gotta take my board. So they know how hard I worked for that.
Oh
So
my God, that's
they've
awesome.
been very supportive. Yeah.
Oh. And again, like, what a great way to educate the community on cancer rehab, period, but also that you're not just practicing, you know, baseline cancer rehab, but you're actively seeking out this really great opportunity to deepen, to further your knowledge so that you can better show up for their patients. And I don't know about you, Sheree, but the oncology, physicians, NPs, PAs, the nurses are fiercely protective of their patients
Yes.
and they want to know that they're getting good care. And I feel like that is such a great way to show, like, I am doing exactly that for our patient.
Yes. Yes. And there's one oncologist, and she'll introduce me. She goes, "This is our PT." And I looked at her one day and I said, "It's so nice to have you say I'm still your PT, even though I don't even work here anymore." She's like, "But you are. You're still our PT." So, yeah.
Oh my God. Well, game recognized game. I mean, I love that so much. So rewind a little bit for the listener who maybe is just starting to dip their toe into the specialization process. They may not know that the first part of actually getting to sit for the oncology specialty certification exam is the application. And the application is not just a paper form that you fill out and say, my name is Elise and I am a PT and I want to do the oncology thing. You also have to submit a case report as part of this initial application. And it's not just, here's a case report I wrote. It's your case report has to be good enough for it to be accepted. So when you were first starting the specialization journey, what did you know about the application and the case report before you started on that process?
Probably nothing except just the
Same.
like how many hours you had to have of, working in oncology and that kind of thing. And I think the thing that I got so frustrated with over the application process was, I mean, I knew I had to write a case report, but I could have gone in and put all that other stuff in there and then just gone back and put my case report in there. But you can't go any further until you put your case report in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I even emailed them. I was like, I can't get this to go. But do I have to do my case report first? They're like, yes.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm curious if you felt this way. I knew that there was a case report because my clinical instructor in PT school actually was one of the first class to take the exam. And she told me, like, on the last day I had my clinical rotation, she was like, you need to take this exam. I was like, okay, yeah, okay. Someday I'm going to take this exam. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so when you get into the application, or at least this is how it was, right? A couple years ago when I did this, you get to the application and then the case report, it's not just like you submit a PDF of your case report. Like you have to literally copy and paste your case report into different sections.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my God. Because I genuinely wrote my entire case report, like, in a Google Doc. And I was like, man, this is a great case report. And then I got to the very end of my application on the day of the deadline, no doubt. So this is on me. And then I was like, oh my God, I may not make it because I am literally copying and pasting individual chunks of my case report into this application portal. I was like, I may not make it. And I'll just have to wait till next year.
Yes, because that was very odd, I thought, too. It seems like you could just put your whole document in there, but no.
Who's to say? Obviously, Sheree and I don't work for ABPTS, so we don't have any insight into why things are the way that they are, just that they are what they are. So application woes aside, and like navigating the portal problems aside, let's dive in a little more to the case report. So before you started writing your case report, how did you feel about having to write a case report?
Extremely overwhelmed. I'd never written a case report, and I'm so old that I have a bachelor's. So we didn't write a case report when I was in school. I think a lot of schools now you have to write a case report, and I was like, I've never done this, don't know how to do this. So very overwhelming.
I'm going to ask you a question I know the answer to, but I know the audience is wondering this. Sheree, are you a researcher?
No, absolutely not.
Do you publish articles and, literature reviews and all that on the regular?
No.
This is what, and Sheree, first of all, like, spoiler alert, Sheree submitted a bomb case report. All the good things is clearly, got accepted, board certified specialist now. Sheree is a clinician like me and like so many of us listening to the podcast right now. And this is a really common barrier or obstacle that a lot of PTs have, Sheree, as far as they think, I'm not a researcher. I'm not an academic. I don't, write papers. So I can't possibly write a case report. Is that something you also experienced or felt?
Correct. Yes. I had no idea how to do that and could not. I don't do research. I honestly, before becoming board certified, didn't read a lot of research even. I think I read more
Same.
research now because I guess maybe I got the nerd bug and started wanting to read more, but didn't do any of that then. But I will say, I had a friend that worked in our medical library locally, and
Wow.
so she was like, "Just email me when you need one of those articles. Just email me. I'll send it to you." So
I
that was
love
a
it.
huge blessing. Yes.
That is amazing. So you get down to write your case report. Like you mentioned previously, you were overwhelmed, didn't really know how to get started. And then at some point, you decided, I'm going to enroll in Elise's case report writing workshop. What made you decide to enroll in that course?
Oh yeah, because I need somebody to hold my hand. Well, I wrote that case report. Yes, talk me through it. Break it down into little steps so that um, it would be easier, one step at a
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah. And, everything that's in the case report writing workshop is because I goofed it up so badly on my own. I was like, no one needs to go through this nonsense. Because, okay, so Sheree, I applied to take the exam. So I sent in my application in 2020, which, as we already talked about, was COVID year.
COVID,
And I
yes.
actually missed the first deadline. Like it came down to it, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get my case report done. I'm just going to wait until 2021 to submit for my, application. And they actually, ABPTS actually ended up extending the deadline. They made like a second deadline at the end of September because I think so few people had submitted to take the exam because of COVID, obviously
COVID, right.
understandable. And even then, I was literally like the deadline in September. I was typing in my case report into the application portal. Like it was so bad. And I said, no one else is going to do this again. Like it doesn't need to be this hard. That's why we made case report writing workshop. What would you say you found to be most helpful or just really helpful in general about case report writing workshop for your case report?
So I think I chose a patient that had breast cancer, metastatic breast cancer, 3 limb lymphedema. And just to like maybe focus in and have a direction to go, as well as, and part of case report writing is not that you did everything correctly, but to look back and see what you did wrong. And
Yes.
so I evaluated her. She was referred for lymphedema. And then, like, have you ever seen a patient so long and then, like, something suddenly hit you in the head? Like, why haven't we working on this other stuff? So I saw her for lymphedema a long time. And then when we were putting on her daytime garments, I realized that she had, I mean, I knew she had pain because she had bony metastasis everywhere, but she was
Right.
very limited functionally, like to reach her legs and do that. Getting in and out of a chair was difficult. So it's kind of like I had two case reports balled into that one patient because it wasn't until we
Yeah.
finished with the lymphedema that it was like, oh yeah, we should be doing some functional things and some strengthening things. So we didn't do that
Yeah.
until the end of the lymphedema, and I think I really had a hard time bundling that all into one case report. So
Mhm.
you were helpful with that, and also that whole the care statement, the care
Yeah.
statement. Yeah, I still don't understand that, but I just know I had to have it in there. So I was just like, I don't understand why this has to be in there, but it has to be in there. So I would
Yeah.
never have ever. I know it spells out that it has to be in there, but I probably would have like skipped right over that. I would have been like, what? What is this care statement, and why does it need to be in there? So
Yeah. I think the only reason that I saw it to put it into my own case report is because someone else pointed that out to me. So what Sheree and I are referring to is, as part of your case report, you have to include some explicit reference to a care article. So, long story short, it's basically like some scientists and researchers got together and said, this is how human case reports need to be done so that they're ethical and they're, like true. They're not false. Gosh, I didn't know that was like a problem in research, but I guess it is. And so it's basically just my case report adheres to those guidelines set by the care. And that, Sheree, is the number one reason that I have heard of people's case reports getting denied when they first submit them, is because they just they don't include a care statement. And that is so, so common. And it's like a bullet point or two in the
Right.
instructions. And if you could totally look over that so easily and just not think about it and not include it and write a really great case report, but because it doesn't have that one thing, it's an automatic like, nope, you got to
Nope.
fix it before you can submit it again.
Yes.
Very
Totally.
common. Very, very common.
And I still am
What
like, okay, it's
is
got to be in there.
right? So you kind of answered my next question. I'm curious if you have any other thoughts on this. You mentioned that you wouldn't have included the care statement without taking case report writing workshop. Is there anything else that you learned or wouldn't have known to include in your case report had you not taken case report writing workshop?
I probably went overboard. I don't remember how many references you could have, but I had the maximum.
Did
But
you really?
yes, and I even had to take one out. Like I was like, oh, this article mentions both of these things, so we'll ditch this one. But I think I went overboard with um, why you did what you did. You know what research shows to support why you did what you did. Um,
Okay.
and then overboard maybe with I think my patient was on Ibrance, and I did a reference about side effects of Ibrance and those kinds of things because my patient swore that the Ibrance caused her legs to swell, and I couldn't find any documentation on
Oh,
that, but she said
yeah.
when she ran out of the medication and had trouble with her pharmacy getting it, that her leg swelling decreased while she was off of it. Um, yeah, so I mean, I think I've overkilled it on references and probably a little bit too much as to,
Yeah.
so,
I
because
mean,
I
I
kind of
guess
took
it's
that
better to have
literally.
too many than too few. So.
Right, right.
Okay, so you and I have kind of alluded to this previously, but you submitted your case report, and then what happened?
You wait,
You're
and
right.
you
You're right.
wait, and you wait
How
some more.
I was gonna say, how long did you have to wait?
A long time. I mean, even so much so, I don't remember if I emailed her right when I was thinking about emailing. They emailed and said, "Oh yeah, we're taking a little
Mm-hmm.
longer with these case reports. Just gonna take a little while." So wait, but then mine was accepted without any corrections. I didn't have to do anything to it. It was I won't
Oh
say
my
it was
god,
perfect, but
that's
it was
amazing!
perfect in their eyes. So that's all that matters.
Yay!
Yeah.
And then fast forward, obviously, I did kind of give away the ending at the top of the episode, but Sheree is a board certified oncologic
Right.
clinical
Yes.
specialist, which means that her case report was obviously perfect in our eyes.
Yes.
Good enough to be accepted by the board. They said yes. And it obviously went through like multiple reviewers, I think, during the process. So they were like, this is a great case report.
Correct.
You
Yeah.
took your exam, and then you had to wait some more to find out you passed, and
Oh
you
yes.
obviously
Wait.
passed, which
Wait.
is
And
why
wait
we're
some
here
more.
today.
Yes.
What advice would you give to somebody who is considering specializing in oncology physical therapy?
One, not to be overwhelmed. Break it down into small steps, and then when you're tackling the case report, just start writing. You can go back and fix it later. Just start writing, just as it comes to you. Just write. Like if you're writing a short story, you would just start writing that, and you go back and tweak it. So just
Mm-hmm.
start writing, and it will all fall into place. So,
Yeah. And then what would you tell somebody who is considering taking case report writing workshop?
it is well worth your money. I think it's a day, one full day.
Mm-hmm.
But it is well worth your money to help you get your thoughts organized and be able to take those thoughts and just kind of run with them and finish your case report.
How did you feel about writing and finishing your case report after you took case report writing workshop?
Um, yeah, I don't think I could have done it without the workshop because I just had no direction. Like I knew I had to write, and I honestly wasn't really sure that the patient I had chosen I was going to keep, but I didn't end up keeping that patient because I put that whole day
Mm-hmm.
into that patient. So I just figured out how to make that work. But um, maybe some other people are a little more driven than me. I don't know, but I don't think I could have done it without the workshop just because it helped you sit down and get your thoughts written down. And
Mm-hmm.
um, I actually looked back through the workbook before this so that I could familiarize myself with it. And,
Yeah.
you know, you had to list like all the patient deficits or patient problems and like just linking that all together to what you did for that and your treatment plan was very helpful.
Yay. Oh my gosh, that makes me very happy to hear. Obviously, that it like worked. It did what it was intended to do.
To do, yes.
You feel like, I know the process of specialization is what really for me solidified that I really know what I'm talking about in cancer rehab. I know how to help patients who have XYZ, but I don't feel like we talk about the case report as much and how it directly ties to what we do as physical therapists in the clinic, in the hospital, and not just researching, writing these like for our daily lives. How do you feel like what you did in your case report has affected your patient care now?
Everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much, a
Yep.
lot of places. And even when I worked in the cancer center, I would be like, this patient's got bony metastasis, and I would like talk to the oncologist, like, yeah, what's safe to do with this person? But through having to find resources and yeah, I don't know that Grummeritz article that came out that has specific do's and don'ts in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that came out about the time I was writing my case report or just before my case report.
Yeah.
Um, so I have, through doing that, I gained the knowledge of, these are safe to do with bony metastasis patients. And, it's safe to exercise them. And I'm not like scared to death. I have put the fear of death into my staff. Like, you can do this, but you got to follow these guidelines here in this
You gotta
article
be
because
safe
if
with it,
something
right?
happens and you're following these guidelines, we've got this article to back us up. So
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
I think uh, it made me feel safe, safe to exercise with a patient with bony metastasis. Whereas before I was always like kind of, crossing my fingers behind my back. Oh, maybe they're not going to crack anything today, but
Totally.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
gained that knowledge.
Oh my God. Woo. What advice would you give to somebody who is starting to write their own case report? Like right now, they're listening to this. You're giving them the motivation to actually get started typing or writing. What would you tell them?
Right, just write it. And first of all, I guess um, be pretty confident in the patient that you chose because, like, I was kind of iffy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but just be confident with that choice of the patient you chose and dig in and go with it and don't second guess. And like I said, there was mistakes I made with this patient. Another mistake I made with her was she mentioned to me I don't know, like way out into when we were working on her mobility and stuff. And she was like, she quilted and she said, I looked down there and had a pin stuck in my finger. And she goes, I didn't realize it because she had taxane based chemo years ago. And I never tested her sensation, which is probably something I should have done when I was putting compression garments on her. So,
But again, and Sheree, thank you so much for sharing that too, because I think there's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves that it has to be a case that we did everything right and
right.
everything turned out well. And that is not at all the case. I've gotten to read some of my students' case reports over the past couple years that I've done this course. And I mean, even like my patient had a DVT during our
During the
episode of
course,
care, and
yeah.
then also ended up with another pathological fracture in the lumbar spine. And so like those were very adverse events that happened.
Right,
That is
exactly.
like and I still wrote a really great case report. And this is the perfect opportunity to reflect
I
on,
think we lost you
now I
both.
know better and I'm going to do better. And that's what Sheree has taken with her into her practice today with patients is, now I know something that I didn't think to do previously. And that's perfect.
Exactly. So you don't have to do everything right, but there is a place in there where you talk about maybe what you didn't do right and what you should have done differently. So
Yeah.
it's okay to be critical of yourself. It doesn't mean that it's not a good case report.
All right. I have one last question for you on case report stuff. And I did not cue you for this. So, I do
Okay.
know I'm blindsiding you a little bit. What are you most proud of about when it comes to writing your case report?
Well, one, that it got finished. But I think, two, I think the knowledge that I gained through writing that case report and just the whole learning process itself. And my case report patient, I still see. So because
Oh.
she's metastatic and like she's not come for a little while and come back. And so she's currently coming like once every 2 weeks. We're not as intensive as we were, but also she was referred from an outside area. She drives a
Mm-hmm.
full distance seat oncologist, so I had to request records um, from down there really to do her as my case report. So I think that made me pull everything together more because the patients that I have come from outlying areas, sometimes I don't request all their records, and I probably should. So
Yeah. Honestly, that's probably a good lesson for all of us.
yes,
I have a patient right now that I'm like, the records are coming week by week as I see the patient. And I feel like I'm learning something new each
something new
time of
every.
like, oh, oh man. Sheree, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and talking about all of this. It's been so fun to watch you, at first from afar. Like, we definitely connected over Instagram first, which is my favorite place
Right.
to hang online. And so, like, to see you there at first and then to get to meet you in person and just see all these really cool things that you're doing has been really, really cool to watch. And it was so lovely to get to meet your biggest cheerleader at CSM
Yeah.
in February. Your husband said something to me that was just so sweet. He was like, I heard your voice all the time.
I have you on my phone. He walked through the living room. Is that Onco girl?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Where can people follow you and connect with you online, Sheree?
Okay, I didn't. I lost you a little bit there.
Oh, that's okay. The only thing I asked was, where can people find you and connect with you online?
Oh, okay. I'm on Instagram, Ribbons PT, and that's pretty much it. We don't have a Facebook.
That's fine.
You can email me anytime, Sheree, Sheree, at ribbonspt.com.
Perfect. And I will, of course, link to all of this in the show notes today. Sheree, thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure getting to see you just grow and blossom into this amazing clinician and private practice owner that I need to learn a lot from during this journey. So I will definitely be having you back because I have some questions for you, friend.
Okay. And I encourage everybody, that's even thinking about specialization, do it, because you'll learn so much through the process that benefit your patients, which ultimately is the reason why we should do it. But
mic drop. I have nothing to add. That was it. Oh my God, Sheree, thank you.
Thank you, Elise.